got him out in the quad. We gotta go.
Yeah.
We gotta go.
Roy. As we rounded the corner, it was completely different fire behavior than we'd been seeing. It was basically a wall of flames. We started backing out of there, but the fire was moving closer and faster than we could back. I got worried we might drive off onto the soft shoulder and drop into a ravine. I have that short bed truck with a heavy-duty bumper on it, so I thought I could ram it into the berm on the driver's side and turn around like I've done 100 times. But I didn't see the berm on the passenger side.
Eric. Sitting there on the passenger side, I had my head turned, looking upslope at the fire. I saw a decadent pinion just cranking. I tried to radio Ashley, but got no response. I tried to radio the buggies, but got no response. I jumped out and bent down to lock in the hubs on the passenger side, and when I looked up over the hood, I realized I'm not going to be messing around with the hubs. That's when the feeling of dread started to wash over me. Roy said we should grab our packs and get out of there. He went back to grab his radio. I was moving with a purpose. I had all my things with me, and I felt good about it. My pack was on, my radio was in my hand. I was running, but kept looking back, trying to maintain a good visual of the fire and Roy. The fire was flanking me faster than I was running, and it was loud. I didn't feel like Roy was in a good place. I yelled back at Roy and asked, "Are you good?" Roy answered yes. Then I lost sight of him. My 3-year-old son's face burned in my mind. I saw where Roy was, and I didn't think we'd be okay. I called the guys on the radio. "Buggies, you got me? Hey, we're compromised." I looked back and couldn't see Roy. It was so dark. Dark. I called again on the radio. "Roy, are you good?"
Roy. I radioed back. "I'm still coming." Then I looked back and saw the fire was coming faster than I was running. At this point, I'm winded. An ember landed on my back and burned me. It was a foot race, and the fire was closing the gap the whole time. As I ran, the sense of urgency kept increasing. My pack was flailing behind me, really slowing me down, so I dropped it, grabbed the shelter out of the side pocket, and had it under my arm, with my radio in one hand and my hard hat and GPS in the other. It occurred to me they weren't doing me any good, so I dropped them. It also occurred to me that my shelter wasn't doing any good in its plastic case. It'd be pretty stupid if they found me like that, shelter and case under my arm. The smoke was rolling over me, so I thought I could use the shelter to shield me from the heat while I ran. I pulled it out of the case and ripped it open. I grabbed the handles and flicked, but it wasn't like the practice shelter at all. It was all stuck together. I was thinking at that time, is this how it all ends? I thought of my wife. She's going to be so mad at me. I thought of my 4-month-old daughter and realized I'm not even going to get to know her. I started kicking the shelter, trying to get it to come open. That's when I heard someone calling my name and realized it was Corey calling me from the UTV.
"Corey, I don't think we had the buggies parked yet when we heard Eric call on the radio. Something about being compromised. I didn't even think we answered. We just got in and started coming. I called Eric and asked if the UTVs would help. He said, yes, send them. We came in hot to the parking spot by the big juniper where the UTVs were parked. I had the door open, ready to jump out. Squad leader Brock went and asked the engine captain if we could use the UTVs, and they said yeah. Brock was putting on his pack and hard hat, but I had already jumped on and was trying to get it to start. Someone yelled something about the brake, and I revved it and took off about 10 feet before hollering back at Brock, "Radio!" He threw me his radio and I was off.
Brock. He literally drove off into a wall of smoke, and I immediately lost sight of him.
Eric. I saw the UTV coming. Corey started toward me, and I was like a third base coach, waving him on, yelling, "Go! Go get Roy!" I tried to look to see if I had anywhere else to go, but there was nothing. I kept running as fast as I could. I distinctly remember when I was almost to the parking area, the wind was suddenly in my face. All I thought was, thank God.
"Corey, I was in heavy smoke almost immediately and was starting to think I needed to turn around. It was really loud. I mean really loud. Right as I was starting to turn, I saw metal flash into it. Must be Roy's shelter. I keyed the radio and screamed for Roy. He started coming, and as I was trying to turn around, the radio went flying off the seat onto the ground. I have a vivid memory of Roy picking it up and saying, "Here, you lost your radio." We had to do a multi-point turnaround that seemed to take forever, but I didn't want to pile up the UTV. Once we made the turn, I gassed it and got out of there.
Roy. We were getting out of there, and Corey turns to me and says, "We can't find Ashley."
Since the crew was back at the trucks, I figured I'd try to get a better eye on what the fire was doing. I moved further south on Lookout Ridge to gain advantage into the drainage. I came to a low spot on the barbed wire fence that I was able to cross and continued contouring to the south for a couple more minutes. I started seeing light smoke come out of the drainage, but could not yet see the base of it. I took the weather and got 70 degrees and 10% RH, pretty much what I'd been seeing all day. By the time I put my kestrel away and my pack on, the smoke had a red glow in it, and it was coming rapidly up the hill below me. I called Roy and said, "It looks like this thing now has two heads. I'm getting out of here." He responded, "You're coming in a little scratchy, but it sounds like you're breathing hard and you're getting out of there. Good plan." I started jogging back to my original lookout position in the old burn, which I had previously identified as my safety zone. The fire was gaining intensity and was level with me on the slope to the south. I thought, this is surreal. This cannot be happening. When I made it to the barbed wire fence, I couldn't find the same spot where I'd easily crossed the first time. I picked a spot to cross, and in the back of my mind I was thinking, if I get my pants caught, that 10 seconds could be the end of me. I made it over the fence and was feeling pretty good about myself, then made it back to my original lookout location. After seeing the fire behavior relative to the fuels and the openings in the burn scar, I realized my safety zone wasn't big enough to weather this thing. I looked over at the parking area on the other side of the drainage and realized that I didn't have enough time to make my way into the drainage and back up the other side. The fire was starting to move rapidly up the slope and down the drainage to the north, with dark smoke rolling out in front of me. I started moving parallel with the head of the fire and slightly downhill. I started running with a vengeance. I came to a side drainage and tried to call Roy on the radio to let him know of my quickly deteriorating situation. When I tried to talk on the radio, I didn't hear the squelch you typically would hear when finishing a transmission. I looked down and noticed the antenna on my radio was missing, and I was no longer receiving or sending radio traffic. I knew right then that I would have to make it out on my own. This was not going to be like some Hollywood movie where an air tanker comes swooping in with a load of retardant to save me. At this point, I dropped my pack, grabbed my shelter and tool, and ran. It felt like it took me too long to get my shelter out of my pack, as I could see the head of the fire without having to turn my head. I finally got my shelter out of my pack and started moving side hill in front of the fire. I was running through stringers of oak brush and looking for a place to deploy, but I could only see green, thick fuel in front of me. I felt like I wasn't going to find any viable possibilities on the hillside, so I dropped down to get closer to the road that led to the safety zone. I ended up in a dry creek bed of the main drainage. Once I got into the drainage, I realized that it was free of vegetation with about 15-foot bare banks. I felt like I could finally breathe. I started to feel like at least I was going to live and could deploy around one of the sharp bends in the creek bed to help deflect heat. However, I could still see only dark smoke over both my shoulders, and I had to keep moving.
Logan, lookout. Horse Park air attack on command. Logan, lookout. Horse Park air attack on Manti, command.
I knew that if I kept moving down this drainage, it would eventually lead me to a safety zone that I had seen from my lookout position.
Logan, lookout. Air attack on Manti, command. If you hear this transmission, use a signal mirror to signal any aircraft.
I also knew my crew was probably worried about me and thinking the worst.
Logan, lookout. Horse Park air attack on command.
I felt like I'd been running forever and figured the fire was still coming when I saw some grass hanging over the bank above me.
Logan, lookout. Air attack on Manti, command. If you hear this transmission, use a signal mirror to signal any aircraft.
I climbed out of the bottom onto a half-acre grassy bench. I pulled a lighter out of my pocket and began burning off the grass. I needed to do something to improve my situation and be active. I thought, you're not going to get me today, fire. I burned off an area primarily to improve a deployment site if needed, but I also thought maybe it would help others to locate my position. As the area was starting to burn off, the lead plane flew over with its wing up, and I thought they didn't see me as I was waving my arms. It flew over again with the wing down this time, and I figured they saw me as air attack started circling me shortly thereafter. Pretty soon, the helicopter from Ute Mountain Helitack started to come in and land next to the area I was burning out. The Helitack crew member came over to me and said, "I am so happy you're okay." And I responded, "Yeah, me too."
Charlie, air ground.
They got him out in the quad. We gotta go.
Yeah.
We gotta go.
Sounded like the Logan crew boss and one other was in the fire.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Units trying to go in and find them. Looks like we got them. They're out. We lost the vehicle, but we got them out. Copy. Lost the vehicle, but you got the guys out.
Fuck, I'm out of here, man.
Mountain Helitack, made by Charlie air ground.
Go. Your fucking truck, yes. Go.
I'm gonna drop this bucket and I wanna come in and get on the ground.
That truck burned up. Yeah. We gotta get out of it.
Jeez, fuck. Is he by himself?
I think so. There's no way I don't think